Night on a US military base doesn't feel like night anywhere else. It's never fully dark, and it's never fully safe. Sodium lights hum overhead, flickering just enough to remind you that nothing here is permanent. Not the power, not the protection, not even the rules. Lieutenant Maya Rourke walked alone. Her boots struck the pavement with controlled precision. No rush, no hesitation. Each step measured, deliberate. The way she did everything. She'd just finished a 14-hour shift coordinating outbound logistics for a joint operation that officially didn't exist. Containers, manifests, names that would never be spoken outside secure rooms. The kind of work that never earned medals. Only trust. The motor pool stretched to her left, rows of armored vehicles resting like sleeping animals. To her right, the low silhouette of maintenance bays, shadows pooling at their edges. She checked her watch. Shout 41 hours. She was almost back to the barracks. Almost. Maya didn't look like trouble. That's what made her dangerous. She was average height, brown hair pulled tight into a regulation bun, face calm, unreadable, eyes that missed nothing. West Point, top third of her class. Logistics, not combat arms, not flashy, not political. Her evaluations described her as steady under pressure and unemotionally effective. What they didn't say was how often she swallowed things, the comments, the looks, the jokes disguised as tradition. She'd learned early that complaining marked you as weak, as difficult, as someone who couldn't hang. So she didn't. She worked harder, spoke less, and walked straighter. Tonight was no different, until the voice came from behind her. Nice ass. It wasn't shouted. It didn't echo. It slid through the dark, low, amused, confident. Maya didn't stop walking. Her shoulders stayed square, her pace unchanged. She'd heard worse overseas, but this wasn't overseas. This was home base. Footsteps followed, not one set. Her right hand loosened slightly, fingers brushing the edge of the small flashlight clipped to her belt. Not a weapon, but weight. Balance. She took a breath through her nose. Keep moving. The light ahead flickered, and then hands came from behind. Fast. Coordinated. One grabbed her shoulder and yanked backward. Another clamped around her wrist, twisting. Her balance broke. For half a second, the world tilted. Sky, asphalt, light, before training took over. She stomped back hard, heel connecting with something soft and solid. A grunt. Someone laughed. Damn, she's feisty. The grip tightened, alcohol on breath, cheap aftershave. The confidence of men who had never been told no, and meant it. She twisted again, elbow snapping up, catching ribs, anger replaced amusement. Hold her. And then, a new voice. Step away from the lieutenant. Calm, flat, unmistakably authoritative. The hands froze. The men turned. The speaker stood several yards away, half lit by a broken lamp. Civilian clothes, hands relaxed at his sides. Posture loose, but ready. He wasn't big, he didn't need to be. One of the men scoffed. Who the hell are you? The man took a single step forward. Someone who just watched you make the worst decision of your careers. Maya recognized him instantly. Chief Petty Officer Jack Hale, Navy SEAL, attached to the base on a temporary joint assignment. Reputation for silence. Decorations that never came up in conversation. A man who had seen worse than this, and never tolerated it. The men shifted, reassessing, 4 of them. One of him. Numbers made people stupid. One shoved Hale's chest. Mind your business. That was the moment. Not the shove. The certainty in their eyes. Jack exhaled slowly. You have 10 seconds, he said. To walk away. Someone laughed again. Second mistake. Jack moved. Not fast. Precise. One man dropped, air exploding from his lungs. Another hit the ground hard enough that he didn't get back up. The others stumbled back, panic replacing bravado. Jack didn't chase, didn't insult. He turned to Maya. You hurt? She shook her head once. That was enough. He keyed his radio. Base security. Motor pool. Now. The night returned. Generators hummed. Lights flickered. The men lay scattered, groaning, stunned, alive. Maya's hands trembled now. Only now. Jack noticed. You did good, he said quietly. She didn't respond. She just nodded. Security lights flooded the area. Footsteps, radios, questions, but the line had already been drawn. Not by policy, not by command, by one person refusing to look away. Maya stood straighter as MPs arrived. Jack Hale stepped back into the shadows, and somewhere on that base, something had shifted. Morning came to the base like nothing had happened. Revel echoed across the barracks. Engines turned over, boots hit pavement in neat rows, coffee brewed, orders were given. The system moved on. That was always the first lie, because beneath the routine, something had fractured, and everyone who'd been near it could feel the pressure settling in, like air before a storm. Lieutenant Maya Rourke sat alone in a small administrative room with beige walls and a single humming fluorescent light. Her uniform was perfect. Her hands were steady now. Across from her sat a captain from legal, a master sergeant from the MPs, and a recorder blinking red on the table. "Just tell us what happened," the captain said, voice neutral. From the beginning, Maya didn't dramatize. She never did. She described the walk, the comment, the hands. She described resisting, not heroically, just factually. Training. Instinct. She described the intervention. When she said Jack Hale's name, the captain's pen paused, just for a fraction of a second. The sergeant noticed. So did Maya. "Is there anything else you want to add?" the captain asked. Maya thought of the laughter, the certainty, the confidence. "Yes," she said. They weren't confused. They weren't joking. They knew exactly what they were doing. The room went quiet. The recorder kept blinking. Jack Hale hated offices. He sat across from a commander he outranked operationally, but not on paper. The walls were lined with unit photos and awards. "Chief," the commander said, folding his hands, "we appreciate you stepping in." Jack didn't respond. "We just want to make sure this doesn't turn into something it doesn't need to be." Jack looked up then. "Sir," he said calmly, "it already is what it is." The commander smiled thinly. These were good soldiers. One bad night. Alcohol involved. Jack leaned back slightly. "There was coordination," he said. "Positioning. Intent. I've seen it before." The smile disappeared. "You're Navy," the commander said. "This is an Army base." Jack nodded. Misconduct doesn't change branches. That was the moment the temperature dropped. The four enlisted men were separated, but not isolated. They talked. They compared stories. By the second day, their statements aligned neatly. A misunderstanding. A joke taken wrong. An officer who panicked. One claimed Maya slipped. Another said Jack attacked without provocation. Their NCO vouched for their character. Quietly. Carefully. Rank didn't shout its defense. It whispered. The shift started small. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. A briefing she usually led was reassigned. A senior officer suggested, gently, that she might want to take a few days. She declined. Every night she walked the base anyway. Not because she had to, because fear only grew in darkness. But now, she felt eyes on her, not protective, not predatory, evaluating, deciding whether she was worth the trouble. Jack was called back in for another statement. This time, the questions were different. How many confirmed engagements overseas? Any prior disciplinary actions? Were you under stress? Jack answered evenly. He'd learned long ago that truth didn't need decoration, but he recognized the tactic. If you couldn't discredit the event, you discredited the witness. Later that night, a fellow operator found him in the gym. "They're circling," the man said quietly. "Careful," Jack nodded. "I know." An unofficial suggestion reached Maya through her chain. If she softened her language, if she allowed the incident to be labeled inappropriate conduct instead of assault, things would resolve faster, cleaner. She stared at the email for a long time. Then she deleted it. Jack and Maya crossed paths near the logistics building days later. No one else around. "You okay?" Jack asked. She nodded. "They want this to disappear." "They usually do." "What if it does?" she asked. Jack looked at her, not as a SEAL, not as a rescuer, as someone who understood cost. "Then you'll know you told the truth," he said. "And they'll know they had to hide it." She exhaled slowly. "That doesn't feel like winning." "No," Jack said. "But it's surviving with your spine intact." That night Jack received a call. Not official. A favor. You might want to back off, the voice said. You're making people nervous. Jack stared at the dark wall of his quarters. Good, he replied, and hung up. The base lights dimmed as night returned. Maya stood at her window, looking out at the same path where it had happened. Jack sat alone, cleaning a weapon he didn't need. Somewhere between them, the truth waited, and not everyone wanted it found. The most dangerous thing on a military base isn't a weapon, it's silence. Silence in briefing rooms, silence in hallways, silence when people know exactly what happened and decide it's safer not to say it out loud. By the third week after the incident, silence had become policy. Specialist Aaron Klein hadn't slept well since that night. He wasn't part of it, not really. He'd been pulling late maintenance near the motor pool when he heard raised voices, laughter that didn't belong where it was. He'd looked up just in time to see bodies shift in the shadows. He'd seen hands on an officer. He'd seen a man step forward and stop it. He'd also seen who the men were and who their friends were. When legal finally called him in, his mouth went dry. Did you see anything unusual? The investigator asked. Klein stared at the table. His mind raced, not with lies, but consequences. He thought of his NCO, his upcoming evaluation, his contract. No, sir, he said quietly. I didn't get a clear look. The recorder clicked softly. Outside the room, the truth lost another witness. The investigation stalled. That wasn't accidental. A senior officer, Colonel David Mercer, inserted himself into the process under the banner of maintaining unit cohesion. Mercer was respected, decorated, untouchable. He'd built his career on keeping problems contained. He called Maya into his office personally. Lieutenant, he said, gesturing for her to sit. You've done your duty by reporting this. Maya remained standing. Yes, sir. He studied her for a moment. Calm. Assessing. But dragging this out helps no one, he continued. The men involved will be disciplined internally. Quietly. Sir, Maya said, voice steady. That wasn't discipline. That was assault. Mercer's jaw tightened. You're young, he said. You'll learn that the institution survives by choosing its battles. Maya met his eyes. So do people, sir. The room went cold. Jack Hale's past surfaced like a blade, an incident overseas, years earlier, classified, justified, but controversial. A split-second decision during a night operation that saved civilians and cost a life tied loosely to local politics. He'd been cleared, but clearance didn't mean forgotten. A legal officer slid a folder across the table. Opposing counsel might bring this up, she said. Question your judgment, your temperament. Jack flipped through the pages once, closed it. They can try, he said, but it could undermine your credibility. Jack leaned forward slightly. Ma'am, he said calmly, I've been shot at by people who wanted me dead. I'm not worried about people who want me quiet. The pressure found Maya in smaller ways. A reassigned office, a training slot quietly removed, a peer who stopped returning messages. One night, alone in her room, she finally let herself sit on the edge of the bed and shake, not from fear, from exhaustion. She'd done everything right, and still, this. She almost drafted the email. I'm willing to accept informal resolution. Her finger hovered. Then she remembered Jack's voice, your spine intact. She deleted the draft. Jack was summoned again, this time by Colonel Mercer himself. This doesn't need to be a crusade, Mercer said. Jack stood at ease, unmoving. Sir, with respect, I didn't make it one. Mercer leaned forward. You're a guest on this base, Chief. Don't confuse moral certainty with authority. Jack met his gaze. Sir, he said evenly, authority doesn't mean much if it only works when no one's watching. That was the moment Mercer realized Jack wasn't bluffing, and that frightened him. Late one evening, Maya received a knock. Captain Elena Brooks. JAG. She closed the door behind her. I can't say this officially, Brooks said, but you're not wrong, and you're not alone. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you, she said. Brooks nodded. Be ready. If this moves forward, it won't be gentle. An anonymous statement appeared in the system. Detailed, precise, positions, words, timing. Someone had remembered. Someone had decided silence cost more than truth. The investigation reopened, this time with teeth. And Colonel Mercer's name appeared in an internal email chain it shouldn't have. Jack stood alone at the edge of the training field, watching recruits run drills under floodlights. Maya walked the same path again, head high, pace steady. The system had noticed, and it was starting to push back. Hard. Justice in the military rarely looks like justice in the movies. There are no gavels, no juries, no raised voices. There are conference rooms with sealed windows, binders stacked too neatly, and people who already know how they want it to end. The hearing was scheduled for 600, early enough to avoid attention, late enough to claim transparency. The room sat deep inside headquarters, windowless, climate-controlled, soundproof. At the center, a long table, on one side, the board, on the other, the witnesses. Maya entered in dress uniform, spine straight, expression calm. She took her seat without looking at the men who'd attacked her. Jack arrived moments later. Civilian clothes again, unarmed, unimpressed. Colonel Mercer sat at the far end, face unreadable. A senior legal officer spoke first. This proceeding will determine whether administrative or disciplinary action is warranted. The language was careful, safe. Maya listened without reacting. Jack watched everyone. When Maya stood, the room seemed to shrink. She spoke slowly, clearly. She described the walk, the comment, the hands. She did not exaggerate. She did not cry. When asked if she felt threatened, she paused. Yes, she said, because they believed there would be no consequences. That sentence landed harder than anything else. A colonel shifted uncomfortably. Each of them testified, each version smoother than the last. Jokes, misinterpretations, alcohol. One claimed he'd only tried to steady her. Maya didn't react. Jack did. His jaw tightened. Jack didn't swear an oath. He didn't need to. He described exactly what he saw, positions, angles, hands. He demonstrated, slowly, professionally, how restraint differs from assault. Then he said this, "In my line of work, intent matters." This wasn't confusion. This was practice. The room went silent. Colonel Mercer leaned forward. "Chief Hale," he said, "are you aware that your prior overseas conduct may be viewed as aggressive?" Jack met his eyes. "Yes, sir. Would you say you have a tendency toward escalation?" Jack didn't hesitate. "No, sir. I have a tendency toward ending threats." A murmur rippled through the room. The legal officer cleared his throat. "Chief, did you consider disengaging instead of using force?" Jack nodded. "I did, and I decided against it. Why? Because if I'd waited, we'd be discussing a different crime." No one argued. The JAG captain stood. "We have additional evidence." Screens flickered to life, an internal email chain. Colonel Mercer's name appeared, discussing containment, optics, minimizing fallout. Not criminal, but damning. Mercer's face tightened. The board changed posture. Questions sharpened. The men's stories unraveled under scrutiny. Contradictions surfaced. Then, a recorded statement played. Specialist Klein, clear, honest. He described what he'd seen and what he'd been afraid to say. Maya closed her eyes briefly. The board recessed. Minutes stretched. When they returned, no one smiled. "Findings," the senior officer said. "Assault, conduct unbecoming, obstruction, administrative separations recommended, command reprimand, career-ending words, spoken softly." The men didn't look at Maya as they were escorted out. Mercer remained seated, staring at the table. Jack stood, saluted no one. Left. Outside, Maya found Jack near the exit. "They won't forget this," she said. He nodded. "Good. Thank you." Jack studied her for a moment. "You didn't need saving," he said. "You needed backup." She smiled. For the first time. Files were closed. Careers ended. But the base felt different. Lighter. Because the truth had been spoken where it wasn't welcome. Justice doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives quietly, in reassigned desks, in empty nameplates, in doors that never open again. The base returned to routine within days. But the routine wasn't the same. 3 careers ended without ceremony. No press releases, no statements to the outside world. Administrative separation papers were signed. Transfer orders were canceled. A once protected NCO was quietly moved out of leadership. Colonel Mercer was not charged. He didn't need to be. His name disappeared from command lists. A man built on control learned what it felt like to lose it. Lieutenant Maya Rourke remained. She took on more responsibility, not as reward, but necessity. Young soldiers watched her differently now, not with fear, with trust. She noticed fewer jokes in hallways, fewer glances held too long, not because everyone had become better, but because someone had paid a price. Jack Hale's orders came through quietly. New assignment, new theater, same silence. On his final evening, he stood alone at the edge of the flight line, watching a transport aircraft idle under floodlights. Maya found him there. "I heard you're leaving," she said. "Yeah, for good?" He shrugged. "For now." She hesitated. "People are saying you're the reason this changed." Jack looked out at the aircraft. "No," he said. "I just refuse to pretend it didn't happen." She nodded slowly. "That's more than most." Weeks later, Maya walked the same path. Same lights, same shadows. But this time, another lieutenant walked with her. They talked about supply shortages, about home, about nothing important. Halfway down the path, Maya stopped. "Hey," the younger officer asked. "Just wanted to remember something," Maya said. She looked into the dark where it had happened, then kept walking. Months later, during a joint training exercise, a young enlisted man intervened when he saw a situation turning wrong. He stepped in early, firm, calm. Later, someone asked him why. He said, "Because someone once did it for my commander." Jack Hale would never know. But it didn't matter. The base at night. Lights steady. People walking, not afraid, not careless, just aware. Courage isn't about strength. It's about presence. Justice doesn't require perfection. Only people willing to stand when silence would be easier. And sometimes the greatest examples are set not by speeches, but by refusal.